Ladies and gentlemen, and I hope we all take our seats, please. Can we all take our seats? Okay, I would like to welcome you all at the Library of Alexandria on this very special occasion of the honoring of Dr. Ismail Serageldin, the founding director of the library, on the occasion also of the 15th anniversary of the Library of Alexandria. First, we will hear a word from the head of the Board of Trustees, Dr. Adil Biltagi. Would you please join me to say a word? Dr. Adil.
Your Excellencies, honorable members of the board, the management team and the colleagues, the staff of Alex, it's my pleasure and honor to be with you today. And it's usually not a very good moment to say or to speak about a work of a person who really was the founder of the Alex with his work. But in life, we have people who pass by. It's a matter of navigation. And in the journey in the sky, for all of us, either you leave a trace, you leave memories, you uplift people, you support humanity, you support a group, and you have specific traits. Sometimes human beings on this planet has a specific traits, and they deal with their communities, their families, with these traits. Some of us is blessed to have more traits than the other, and the traits here which count is the traits which is transmitted from the person to the environment around him. Dr. Ismail Serageldin is a person who is very hard to talk about him because he is a multifaceted person. And his trip in life has really accumulated a lot of experience and knowledge, and he worked as true scholar to strengthen and sharpen his capability all the time. In institutions he worked in, and I had the opportunity to talk about colleagues who was their mentor. Some of these colleagues who was their mentors, he became the vice president of the World Bank. And in the World Bank, he had different functions. From Africa, whereby he helped a lot of countries, developing countries, and he moved to create the CGIAR, or the equivalent of the CGIAR, which is a consultative group for the poor and the least developing countries. And this was really something which nobody thought of. The pain and the agony of these people in these countries is really affecting us all. It's not a matter of that you leave countries behind. With this world now, it's very hard that people who think that they are safe, the 14% of the world population, which is about 7 billion, 0.3 or 0.4, are 14% of them, they lived in OECD countries, and the rest are left over. But he focused on these people. He worked for the poor countries. He really supervised a big group in the bank looking at sustainable development in these countries. Meanwhile, he has not only, it's as an engineer, he didn't stop there. He has books on Shakespeare and other aspects. And this is a multifaceted side of him, not only in this, in science, in genomics, and even gene editing. He is really versed into it. He worked with a special committee looking at the ethics of gene editing, which will make great transformation in the field of biology, nanotechnology, and other aspects. And he get himself acquainted with the frontier of science as well as the frontier of literature and art, which will affect the human being. Let me say just a couple of words about what I have witnessed him doing in this library. He really treated his colleagues, especially the young people. He used to tell us early on when he was starting the work in the library that probably my age is making an imbalance in the average age of the colleagues in the library because they are all young. He was the only one. If you take the mean, then it will be affected. But it's a matter of how you can work with these young people. He worked with them cordially. He had a flat management concept at that time. And the board tried several times to let him have 3 deputy directors. And he used to refuse because he would like them to express themselves fully and work on a flat line management. And cordially, he supported them to develop to great degrees. And of course, one has seen this in different people, as well as he has an eye of selecting wonderful people to help in the library for years. As the board has told you this morning, Dr. Ismail, you are not leaving. And this is not something which we say as a threat for the incoming director, whom we welcome. But he will appreciate this. You are not leaving from a sense of people who build the institutions. They are there all the time. And therefore, we wish you all the best in your future endeavor, as well as we hope that I know that the library will be always in your heart. He worked with great passion, and this is what makes the difference. Some people do the job, and they say, we are only doing our job. But he worked with dedication. I remember the days in Washington with the CGIR. In Pennsylvania Avenue, we used to walk at night and go to restaurants there and so on. And the buildings of the IMF and the World Bank, it's all, there's no light. Only office in the corner of your old building, which is, he had an office in the corner. It's always, in Saturday and Sunday, the light is there. And the team who worked with him, they were talking to themselves because they are not accustomed to this. But dedication, passion, this is what makes the difference. And I wish that your example to the different colleagues here in the library will be remembered, and really it will continue. We wish as well Dr. Mostafa el Feki all the best in his position as the incoming director. It's not it's a challenge, but challenge with pleasure, because this diamond, which is called the Bibliotheca Alexandrina, should be maintained, and the board is supporting you in doing this. And we are looking at wonderful days to come for the Bibliotheca Alexandrina. I do thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adel, for your words. And I would like to invite Her Excellency President Vaira Weiberga, member of the Board of Trustees of the Library, to say a word. Madam President.
Good evening, dear members of the staff of this library who have taken the step of inviting us all tonight to honor your boss and our colleague Ismail Serageldin. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, dear Ismail and dear everybody. We all have worked with Ismail in various capacities, and we know him from a variety of facets of his personality. But as members of the Board of Trustees, the part of him that we saw at work was the superb visionary for what the Library of Alexandria should be. A vision of how it should be reborn as a center of excellence, as an institution where meritocracy and quality, dedication and intellect are valued among the staff, not the time that a person has physically sat around in a certain job or a certain position. I think the principle of appreciating every person, every staff member for the potential that they have, his nurturing of the talents of the young people who flocked around him, and his pride in them as if they were his own children when they flourished and developed and grew into wonderfully competent world-class specialists. That is the part that we saw as members of the Board of Trustees, and he was always surprising us with new projects, with new ambitions, with a scope of work in reporting it that is simply dizzying in its variety. I know that many countries like my own, Latvia, which is a small country, cannot manage in the whole country to accomplish as much as this library does every year in terms of cultural events and various programs, activities, research centers, and so forth. But those of us on the Board of Trustees also have a personal relationship with Ismail, because he has been kind enough to invite each and every one of us to sit on this board, for which I personally am deeply grateful, and I'm sure I speak for all of my colleagues who have found this experience of working with Ismail's board both illuminating and stimulating and a true inspiration to us all in everything else that we do in our various walks of life. Many of us among the Board of Trustees know Ismail from other settings as well, because I think it's fair for me to point out this evening that you have here a man who has not just built up an institution that is a beacon of knowledge and enlightenment and tolerance in Alexandria, in Egypt, in the Arab world, and in the whole world, the whole wide world, a world-class institution. But he's also an admirable Renaissance man, happens to have been born in the 21st century, and managed to tackle both the 20th and the 21st century, which he saddles in his lifetime, with a passion and the openness and the unflinching courage to always take on something new, which to me is the mark of a Renaissance man, not to mention a man of absolutely superb intellect. And that has been one of, I think, also of the bonuses for us, where anybody who works with Ismail, working with a brilliant mind, is an inspiring and encouraging experience. It's very enjoyable. He is so erudite that it will take me all evening to start enumerating the surprising variety of disciplines and endeavors in which he is superbly knowledgeable and can stand in front of an audience or a TV camera and enthrall them with the breadth of his information and erudition. But he also wears his erudition lightly. He's not a pompous intellectual whatsoever, but a very accessible and modest man. And I must say that as somebody who has loved books all his life, who has dedicated much of his life to building this temple to the book as an institution, he's also a superb orator. And I, as somebody who's both a practitioner and a student of oral language and oral poetry, have always been impressed by the quality, the superb quality of his speeches. When you put Ismail's speech next to so many others, I think the library should have a new research center, and that is how to teach people public speaking. Because all of us have to suffer through so many politicians and other officials who really, really could do with lessons from Ismail Serageldin. When he speaks, the speech is structured in an impeccably logical Cartesian structure. In addition to that, it sparkles with wit. It is strewn with famous quotations or ones that you would like to look up on your Google or whichever you use to find out where does that quotation come from. That's a terrific quote that he has there. He has a simply stupefyingly diverse and rich vocabulary, and that's just one of his languages. That's just in English. He has a superb knowledge of English literature. He is able to quote the best classics and poets in his speeches. And I tremble to think of how wide his erudition must be in his native language and the literature of that first language, Arabic. Yeah, I know he's a perfectly fluent French speaker, and truly we have here a polymath, a Renaissance man, who has in this building in many ways left a temple to the excellence, the level of excellence that can be achieved in a country like Egypt. And the dream of everything that Egypt does should be first rate, it should be the best, and that is what any Egyptian should be striving for, to be as good as anybody else in the world, and very frequently better. That is my wish for the library, its new director, all the people who work in it, and truly also for all the young people to whom the library continues to be a very important outreach for the country of Egypt, that it should always strive to be the best that it can ever be, and to be convinced of its qualities and the level of excellence as that historically belongs to it.
Thank you, Madam President. I would just like to highlight the fact that we are having our gala dinner tonight in the main reading area of the Library of Alexandria, which is something that is not a usual practice. This is a very, very special occasion that we close our reading area for this event. And this is a very special event honoring our founding director. Having said so, I would like also to say that now the Board of Trustees has elected a new director for the library, who is going to take this library to new horizons, inshallah. And I would like to invite Dr. Mostafa el Feki to say a word on this occasion. Dr. Mostafa, please.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so grateful that you have given me the chance to say a few words about Ismail Serageldin. Ismail Serageldin, for me, whom I have known him for the last 3 decades, is an exceptional person with a colorful personality. Ismail Serageldin is one of those who have the chance to be well-cultured, highly educated, with accumulation of experience internationally and nationally. That's why nobody could be compared by Ismail Serageldin. And I think my job will be very difficult being the director after him. But I'm sure that he will never leave us without his advice, his support, and his wisdom. Again, I'm so grateful to all what he has done for his own country and for the whole world, being an international figure. Everybody knows him and respect him, and I can assure him that we will follow his steps as much as we can. We may not be, I'm talking about myself at least, up to his own performance, but we will try as much as we can. I was not prepared to talk, but this is my feelings at least. I wish you, Dr. Ismail, the best, and I hope that God will give you health and happiness, you know, as you have done a lot for your own country. And as Dr. Adel Biltagi has just said, the founders couldn't be forgotten at all. They are always there in the heart of the institutions they have built, and you will be always in the heart of the Alexandria Library. I wish you good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mostafa. And now we have prepared a very short film for this occasion that I would like you all to see. It's about our founding director, Dr. Ismail Serageldin.
The world is my home. Humanity is my family. Non-violence is my creed. Peace, justice, equality, and dignity for all is my purpose. Engagement, rationality, tolerance, dialogue, learning, and understanding are my means. With outstretched hands, we welcome all those who share these beliefs.
Dr. Ismail Serageldin is one of the people I admire most in the whole world.
He's a Renaissance man.
Brilliant.
He is truly a genius.
True public intellectual.
I call him Last Leonardo.
Possibly the most accomplished polymath that I have ever met.
رجل من أنبه العلماء في العالم.
His knowledge, his experience is tremendous.
He's an intellectual compass for so many of us.
He's a very impressive gentleman. I've enjoyed my interactions with him.
I think he's also a passionate man for ideas, for the culture, and for the Bibliotheca.
In this short video, we try to portray Ismail Serageldin in the eyes of politicians, intellectuals, scholars, and scientists who have come in close contact with him. These are just a few whom we succeeded to record with. But of course, there are others who have hailed his personality, knowledge, vision, and dedication.
He's a very good leader. He gives direction, leadership based on knowledge. He is a man who inspires, and that is very important today. And I think that he also sees the importance of engaging the young generation. That is always good when I come to the Bibliotheca to see even small children here out on the plaza and in different programs. And I think this is part of the vision of the librarian of Alexandra Serageldin.
Without him, I do not think
that Alexandrina would have become what it has become in just 15 years.
We consider that he is a very powerful and capable force behind the success of the Bibliotheca.
So that we can clone Ismail Serageldin and have 10 Serageldins. That's what we should do.
He's a very impressive gentleman. I've enjoyed my interactions with him.
Dr. Ismail Serageldin is a good friend of mine and one of the most impressive person I ever met in my political life and in my other activities in the cultural sector and international affairs.
I believe he is a unique individual with interests ranging from Shakespeare to science to planning. Not too often do you have an individual with that array of interests. And of course, you need those very broad interests if in fact you are going to be engaged in a global program such as the one that you're developing today at the Bibliotheca.
Appreciate the personality Ismail Serageldin. He is one of the greatest personalities in the current world because he's a specialist in economy, in CV, the vice president of the World Bank, but more. He's a philosopher. He's a real thinker. He has a holistic vision on the world and a capacity to convince other people. He's a charming person. It's very important to have intellectual capacity, but it's also important to be a friendly person, a charming person.
Dr. Serageldin has an extremely impressive intellect, a wide range of understanding, very open to many ideas.
I see him as being an orator who inspires, and I am personally inspired every time I am lucky enough to hear him speak.
I'm a great admirer of Ismail Serageldin. I visited the library in Alexandria a few years ago. It's a remarkable building that establishes a very powerful connection with the remarkable past of Alexandria and of Egypt.
Throughout a journey of 15 years, he created a formidable, internationally renowned institution which receives more than 1 million visitors annually and holds more than 1,000 events every year. The official website of the library gets more than 1 billion hits per year.
City is very nice. It's got water. I mean, it's a beautiful building, but what's really beautiful about it is the two things: above all, the youth and the dynamism and the vitality of the young staff there under Dr. Serageldin's leadership.
He never ceases to surprise me. He always has a new rabbit to take out of the hat.
He's the person that is beloved by everybody. His works, and it's enriching all the time that you have a chance of interacting with him to learn so much from his experience. He brings this moral guidance that glues and brings everything together. So it's a great luxury to have him in the position that he is.
I think he is the spirit behind the activities, the image of the Bibliotheca Alexandrina, and its international stature. I think he's doing great work. Creative mind, determined personality, and pleasant administrator.
I know all of his good things and I know all of his faults, and I don't think that the Library of Alexandria could have gotten a better person than him in any way, as a manager, as an organizer, as an intellect, as somebody who knows exactly what to do so that you can spread knowledge, education, and the liberation of ideas better than Ismail Serageldin for this great position.
I've been extremely impressed by his scholarliness, his concern for the world, and his wanting to make an intellectual environment in which everybody can participate.
Oh, he's a great man. He's very important in our international activities, and he's a really important creator of international public opinion. So he's a very educated and experienced man, and I'm happy and proud to cooperate with him.
Dr. Ismail Serageldin has accomplished in this short period of time that the library has existed, has done a great deal for science.
He himself is a miracle. He's a man of all seasons.
I think Dr. Ismail Serageldin and the team are absolutely fantastic.
Dr. Serageldin is the only one that I would, without hesitation or reservation, describe as a genius. I think he and the Library of Alexandria were made for each other. And the longer they can keep this close connection, the better for the library, the better for Egypt, and the better for the world.
I think Dr. Serageldin is astonishing as the BA director. He's indefatigable. I don't know if he ever sleeps or ever takes any time down, but he is himself a Renaissance person, interested in music, in art, in architecture, in undersea, in Shakespeare, in science, in biology. I can't even think of the fields. And then every once in a while you learn of a new one. I have a hard time imagining anybody whose coverage of knowledge would extend that far, let alone the enthusiasm, innovation, and imagination on how you can get that knowledge out to a very large audience using the Bibliotheca as the mechanism to make it happen.
Because I'm fascinated by the place, I'm fascinated by the building, I am fascinated by the audacious venture to recreate the center of the scientific world almost in Alexandria. And I think Dr. Serageldin is doing a great job.
رجل من أنبه العلماء في العالم. فيعني بصراحة دي حاجة الواحد بيفتخر بيها في مصر.
He has a wonderful array of talents that spans from art to history to science. He's not a scientist by training, and yet he grasps the concepts and the underlying paradigms very well and understands their value without relinquishing the values, all of the humanistic values that connect us with each other and with our each individualistic cultures.
That was quite a special person. It's difficult to find a person like Ismail, and I believe it's necessary to follow his experience and to follow his engagements, not only for the library, but everywhere he is participating.
Ismail Serageldin belongs to the very, very few true public intellectuals. He has an enormous knowledge from his own tradition, his own country. Well, he's a cosmopolitan. And as a cosmopolitan, with incredible talents, he's using them to protect the world of culture and to take care for its transmission. The library is a world where you can transmit knowledge.
Ismail Serageldin I consider to be one of my top friends, and he has been the strongest supporter of the work I've done. And I owe him my past 5 years, and I owe him my future. I would do anything for the man.
Ismail Serageldin is one of the wise men that I ever met. And he is so smart and intelligent, and he conducted in such a good way Bibliotheca Alexandrina that I have only words of appreciation for his work, his mind, his enthusiasm about not only Bibliotheca Alexandrina, but also about culture in the world.
He talks about the latest scientific breakthroughs and innovations, but then he always is deeply rooted in the reality and how to use those for improving basically people's lives.
His leadership has been excellent. His insight, I mean, I've read various articles that say, you know, he's the smartest man in Egypt. That phrase has been repeated many times, and maybe it's true.
The right man in the right place, because very seldom seen such an intellectual man. All variety of history, economy, and ecology, and biology. So that means it's an example of education of enlightenment. When a person really was an engineer, a painter, an artist, an architecture, and a scientist, and it was is the same person.
Well, you know that I'm an excited proponent of not only the institution but of its current leader, Ismail Serageldin, who is possibly the most accomplished polymath that I have ever met, an interest and enthusiasm for virtually everything. And he's the perfect incarnation of why you want to have a Library of Alexandria, and also why you want to have the information technologies of the world concentrated.
Ismail Serageldin's work has been recognized around the world by many awards and 35 honorary doctorates. He serves on many boards and advisory committees for academic, research, scientific and international institution and civil society efforts.
He's a wonderful man and a proof that individuals can change the path of history through his huge network and all the amazing activities he is able to facilitate.
His dedication, and more than dedication, leadership, thoughtful, innovative, and giving room to people around him. I consider one of my biggest privileges in my interesting life to be knowing Ismail personally. It's very unfair to compare other people with Ismail because Ismail is a unique person as far as I am concerned. I call him Double L. I call him Last Leonardo of 21st century. He's also the person who knows so many things about so many precise and concrete things. How does he describe himself? What is he? I'm a student. I'm learning, studying all my life, and hopefully until the end of my life. And that's actually what makes Ismail so extraordinary person. Ismail Serageldin is a person who has admiration of all of us because he's a man of knowledge, he's a man of wisdom, but you see, after all, he's a good man. Last Leonardo Ismail Serageldin was a great man, an extraordinary person in the sense of knowledge that is evolving on a daily basis.
I will use an expression rather than words to say, wow, what a man, what a vision. We need more people like him in the world.
Dear esteemed members of the Board of Trustees and Advisory Board of the Library, dear guests and friends of the library, dear colleagues, the film you have just seen shows but a few of the many quotes by intellectuals, scientists, politicians, and eminent figures from around the world about the founding director of the new Library of Alexandria, Dr. Ismail Serageldin. Working on the preparation for this film, we had a very difficult time to limit its duration to the 15 to 20 minute slot for the sake of this event. In reality, the choices were endless, and we have done our best to include as many quotes as possibly can. In front of you, you will find a booklet of the quotes you have just heard and some others, which we thought would be a symbolic gesture of appreciation for the man who created, in just less than 15 years, this cultural edifice that stands now on par with its international peers in many fields. Dear guests, I'm standing here today in front of you on behalf of the BA staff, and in preparing this brief speech, I was wondering what is the thing that the BA staff would like most to say to their leader. I found no other than the two words, thank you. So I stand here on behalf of every staff member of the BA to say, thank you, Dr. Serageldin. Thank you for the time and effort you have invested in us and in our wonderful institution. Thank you for the wide knowledge you conveyed to each one of us over the past 15 years. Thank you for your guidance. Thank you for the endless opportunities you opened for all of us. Thank you for the support you gave us through direct mentoring, retreats, trainings, travel opportunities, and networking, and many more. Thank you for your support and encouragement in exploring new horizons. Thank you for believing in us, then young Egyptians. Thank you for believing that we are able and that we can achieve. Dr. Serageldin, you have touched the lives of each one of us, and yours was truly a magic touch. You tapped our potential and encouraged us to fulfill it. Thank you for a magnificent journey, a journey of discovery and exploration, a journey of knowledge, a journey of success, a journey based on principles and truth. But most of all, thank you for a journey filled with inspiration and love. Dr. Serageldin, we promise you to do our best to maintain the institutional culture that you have instilled in us. We promise to work hard to maintain our competitiveness and to continue to play an active cultural role on the local, regional, and international arenas, a role that is much needed in a world of many and difficult challenges. We promise to work together as a team, as you always taught us, to explore new horizons and to take this institution even further, as we know you would like us to. I seize this opportunity to also thank our members of the Board of Trustees for their continued support of the library and their belief in its mission. I would also like to seize this opportunity to welcome our new director, Dr. Mostafa el Feki, and to congratulate him on his appointment. Finally, and in appreciation of our leader, the founding director of this institution, we would like to set a tradition at the Library of Alexandria, a tradition that is practiced in most international academic institutions and some governmental institutions and ministries here in Egypt. A tradition that will celebrate our directors as we grow as an institution to keep the memory of those who have sailed this ship through calm waters and rough seas. Dear Dr. Serageldin, as the founding director of the new Library of Alexandria, we have commissioned a painting of you to be put up in the VIP entrance of the library as the first portrait of a long line of BA directors. We hope that this very small token of gratitude will stand there to show you and everyone how we, the staff of the BA, will honor you forever. Thank you. And now, Dr. Serageldin, would you like to say a word, please?
Thank you, Hodar. Thank you, friends. Thank you, all those who are not here. I'm usually not at a loss for words, but I must say that I am taken aback both by the enormous gestures that you have made, the amount of research that you put together to make a film like that, including finding a picture of me when I was like 5 years old, still reading a book, of course, and the many, many kind words that were recorded there. I'm also extremely grateful for the organization of this event. I must say, today is a very special day, of course, made all the more special by our being here together. And let me start by saying, of course, a few reminiscences, which is an appropriate thing to do on an occasion like this. And I would like to start with my good friend, Mostafa el Feki. And in fact, both in the past and in the very recent past, we have been in touch, and he affected my life in many ways that I did not imagine, including the one in which we are here. To start with, I first met Mostafa el Feki in Austria, and he was the person who introduced me to Mrs. Suzanne Mubarak. And so the first time that Suzanne Mubarak and I met was at his table in Austria, and she was getting an award from the European Academy of Sciences and Arts. And he had called me, and he said, "Do you know these people?" I said, "Yes, I'm also a member of their academy." And he said, "They're good people?" I said, "Absolutely." And he said, "Well, what about what kind of an event?" I said, "Look, I will be in Austria at the time, Mr. Ambassador." I mean, I knew, of course, who he was, because in his very distinguished career, he had already been the personal assistant to the President of the Republic for information. He's a very distinguished intellectual, very well known. And so we met there, and he introduced me to Mrs. Suzanne Mubarak in what will become a wonderful friendship. And in fact, she became the person who would change my life. I had been at the World Bank for over a quarter century, but I always was in love with culture, with reading, with education, with science, with communications. And as a result, with my very good friend, almost father, if I may say, Boutros Ghali, who had come to the UN, I talked about running for UNESCO. And I decided to run for UNESCO. And there I met Mrs. Mubarak again, and I met Mostafa el Feki again on this important campaign, which, although it did not succeed in getting me to the seat in UNESCO, nevertheless did two things. One, it built bridges between me and Mostafa and me and Mrs. Mubarak, and mentally opened up the idea of leaving the World Bank, that it was not an inconceivable thing to do, although I had been very happy there. And of course, you know that it was Mrs. Mubarak who made this project possible. I mean, we have to admit that. If it had not been for her, this would have been probably just another institution in Egypt. But she was willing to make it an exceptional institution, not just an exceptional building. And she really gave unlimited and unstinting support to the adventure that would become the Library of Alexandria. And then let me say sort of a quick forward, fast forward, to basically, 2 months ago, when I spoke to good friends like Amr Moussa and again Mostafa el Feki, about the need to transform the Institut d'Egypte. And we started talking together about how to do this. And Mostafa and I were talking about working together in a new capacity to transform the Institut d'Egypte. I was already thinking about what I would do after the Library of Alexandria. Little did I know that we would be working together in a different capacity. For I am delighted to see that he has been elected by the board to take the responsibility and the reins of that responsibility for the Library of Alexandria. And let me say that, of course, I will always be available to assist in every way possible, but that I'm also, in my heart of hearts, of course, very satisfied that at the end of the day, the person that I was seeking to be my partner in transforming another institution turned out to be the person to whom I would hand over the reins of this institution, of which, of course, there is nothing that is closer to my heart. And somebody would ask me and say, aren't you sad that you did not win the UNESCO campaign? And I said, you know, we say in the Quran, "Asa an takrahu shay'an wa huwa khairun lakum." Sometimes you may be worried about something, but in fact it turns out to be very much better. Can you imagine if I had won the UNESCO campaign, I would have had to resign after 6 months in order to come here. So that was not to be. And I'm happy that we were here. I'm happy to look at my colleagues and see their faces and reflect as I look back on the early days when we were here, the early days when we started at the very beginning. And some of you are still not only still here, but also assuming the reins of responsibility in this institution. We started 44 staff, right, Shireen? And then we had the corporate secretariat of 8 at the time, and we said we're going to create a great institution. And for many of the people at the time, they were not very convinced. I think later on they admitted that they thought I was a little bit crazy, but that's okay. You know, he will confront reality soon enough, and pretty soon we will all settle down. Dr. Magdi Nagy and Dr. Noah Adli, I recall when we moved into this building, there were no telephones. We had, I said, we're going to move into the building so that it shall be finished. And we were slipping down the wires to connect computers from the 3rd to the 5th floor down the shafts of the elevators. You remember those? Those were amazing days, weren't they? And yet, at the time, I was telling them, and we will have thousands of computers all over here. There was, and then one email account at the time in the library, and guess what? We have over 4,000 computers now, 3,000, some 500 here in this building, and 500 spread in other offices around the place. We have a supercomputer standing right behind me here. That is the supercomputer that I showed you earlier today that does over 100 teraflops. And we are the only library in the world that has this. We did many things that people did not think were possible. And in this very hall, I took a great risk on a very young man who's a good friend, who's not here today, but who's here in another way, because Dr. Fathi Saleh brought me a composition, a musical composition that he sent me. That was Sharif Muhyiddin. We had organized the inauguration of the library, and it was very ambitious. We had 750 little children dressed in gauze who came out on all these balconies and all these levels and sang the Ode to Joy from Beethoven's Ninth Symphony played by traditional Egyptian music instruments. We had magnificent singers from all over the world, magnificent speakers from all over the world who came and appeared. And everybody was extremely worried because although Sharif and I agreed on everything we would do with our Norwegian friends, this is probably the only case of a major event like the inauguration of the Library of Alexandria, where we had a number of sitting heads of state, including Mr. Chirac and Mrs. Chirac, who were present, Queen Rania, Queen Sofia of Spain, many others, and where all these singers, orchestras, had never had a chance to rehearse. They all arrived, took their places, and like magic, the magic of the library was there. The spirit of the library rose. The spirit of the library that we had seen in the preparation. We had our Scandinavian friends working on the Nobel section. We had our American friends working with us on the Internet Archive. We had our Greek friends working with us on the Antiquities Museum. We had our Italian friends working with us on the Manuscripts Museum, and so on. People from all nationalities had come together, working with the Egyptian staff, the core staff that would make this work. And some of the most amazing things happened. I must recall Dr. Khalid Azab being here. We were working around the clock, not surprisingly, we were working around the clock, and we had brought this huge statue of Ptolemy that you see outside the library. And of course, to move it was extremely difficult. We needed special cranes and special equipment. The Arab contractors provided it. It had to move, it's 63 tons. 63 tons, it required a special foundation, but more importantly, it arrived at 3 a.m. And the statue was, raised and put in its place and so on. And then, the ultimate power in Egypt strikes again. The ultimate power in Egypt is seen in a small statue in Paris known as the scribe, the bureaucracy. People who brought this huge statue said, who's going to sign for it? 3 a.m. Who's going to sign? We can't give you this statue like that. What do you mean, give us the statue? We just put it up. It took this crane to put it up. So Khalid Adab stepped into the breach and said, give me the paper, I will sign. And he said, are you authorized to sign? Yes, I'm authorized to sign. And he signed, and the man took his paper and left. And then they discovered that Khalid had pulled a fast one on them, because normally none of the antiquities that are here are on anything except more or less on loan under the supervision of the Department of Antiquities, except that this statue was transferred officially. So now it became Naql Usul, became asset transfer, and people in the Department of Antiquities said, how could you do this? And said, well, we delivered the statue, somebody had to sign, it was 3 a.m., what do you expect? So we started with these adventures and that spirit of adventure. And I'm happy to say that as I look forward and I see all of you together here, I'm deeply touched because all of you have become family. Have become not just friends and family, but really family. And members of the board, we are more or less family. Many of us see each other in many different guises and occasions. But for the staff here, they are indeed my family. The library, this was a very nice quotation from my website, but in many ways, and I'm sure that my late wife would agree, the library is my home. I spend more time here than I do in practically any other place over the years. And the staff of the library have become my family, and I'm very proud of them. I'm proud of them for all their achievements, because actually when people tell me you did this or you did that, I'm reminded by the great, great musician Daniel Barenbaum, who was told, you produce such magnificent music. And he said, I don't produce anything. He plays the violin, she plays the flute, he plays the piano. Me, I just wave my hands in the air. I'm not producing any sounds. And that is very much what happened here. Every one of those projects is somebody's idea, or sometimes a little bit of a nudge from me to that person. Sometimes I see in them more than they see in themselves. Sometimes I can say to someone, you can go further. You can do more than what you are doing. And Dr. Adel Biltagi pointed out that I am very proud of the fact that when I was at the World Bank and I recognized young people and I gave them their first managerial jobs. The World Bank is a very competitive place. It's a huge place, 19,000 staff, 22 vice presidents. 5 of these young people that I picked to give them their first managerial job went all the way to become vice presidents of the World Bank. And the same was true here. They had the latent abilities that needed to be encouraged. And once they were on their way, they became unstoppable. I think it is true of everyone, and they each bring me special joys. I argue with Azza Al-Khuli about commas and formation of words and sentences, and I argue with Noha Omar on the French side, on the accent, which I say should be abolished, and she defends the language in very powerful ways. But they each bring unique talents to their tasks, and it is one of the great adventures that the whole is more than the sum of the parts. And that's because they are a magnificent team, a team where everybody does their work, everybody understands how they fit in a certain part. And they can argue and fight among themselves, but in the end, they come together as a team. And that, I think, is one of the characteristics of this place. And so, as I come at this moment and I'm asked by some people, I was asked by an interviewer recently, are you not sad? And I said, no, not at all. I'm not sad. I'm proud. I am proud. And he said, how could that be? I said, well, I will give you an example which I think is true, and it comes from the heart what I'm going to say. Think if you have a child, and that child has grown and gone through college and became, an absolutely magnificent scholar and won all sorts of awards. And not only has that person graduated, but you are watching them as they are about to embark on a journey to earn their doctorates overseas. It's not a moment of sadness. It is a moment of joy, a moment of pride, a moment of happiness. And then to add to that, to know that my friends on the board are still going to be there to guide the actions of this institution, that my friend Mostafa el Feki is going to be taking over the reins instead of helping me fight in the Institut d'Egypte. He's going to be here at the forefront of things. And therefore, I believe that for each of us, we are starting a new phase. And in that new phase, a new part of our journey of life, journey of discovery, whether you're taking on a new job or you are working in the same job but under different circumstances or going somewhere else, there is a new form of exploration, and that exploration is of the self, of what is inside of us. And as T.S. Eliot said in a quote that I like a lot, and he said, we shall not cease from exploration. And after all this exploring, we shall come back to where we started, within ourselves, and recognize that place for the first time. And so, my friends, I bid you au revoir, not adieu. I will look forward to seeing you all. And Vaira and I even mentioned once that we have become like twins, because we work together on the Chirac, we work together on the Talberg, we work together here, we're together in the Nizami Ganjabi Center with the unique Rovshan over there. And we work together, of course, in the Club of Madrid as well, and so on. So for many of you, and for me, it is not going to be a separation, it will be a reunion. But within ourselves, we know that we have been enriched by this phase of the journey, and may each and every one of you go from success to success and enjoy every single moment of your lives. Thank you.